Hi, I'm Melanie Zahara. I'm Educational Officer of SQs, and you are?
Pleasure, Melanie.
Yes.
I'm Maria Aquilina. I am a physicist and the project associate at CERN,
Okay.
and I'm currently a PhD candidate at the Faculty of ICT, the University of Malta.
All right. Could you briefly introduce yourself, like what you do at CERN? Yeah.
So, essentially, I am a physicist. I am doing data analysis on the LHC runs. So we have data from the historical data catalog at CERN, and we analyze it and we get the statistics of our data. We try to replicate it, and essentially what we do is create Monte Carlo simulations in order to have a statistical test bed. Now, what do we do with that test bed? Now that we've managed to recreate the fills from the LHC, we develop optimization strategies that can be both numerical, so based on numerical methods, more mathematical, or perhaps more machine learning based methods. So basically we consider a reinforcement learning based agent that could learn the statistics of our fills and how they evolve in time. And then we take a decision in both the numerical algorithms and the machine learning algorithms of when is the best time to dump a beam in the LHC. And that optimization strategy, it will help us for fill management, and essentially the main aim is to increase the number of collisions, called also luminosity, the integrated luminosity over a full year of LHC operations in the LHC, in the machine that we are considering. Now, such strategies, they can be tweaked according to the machine parameters you're considering. So if you're creating a Monte Carlo simulator based on certain parameters that are specific for the LHC, you could have another machine as long as it's circular, and you can fix its parameters according to theoretical values. For example, if it's a future upgrade, for example, HL, LHC, which will be happening after the predicted long shutdown that we're going to happen after July 2026. And even further than that, we can also consider future machines, like the Future Circular Collider. So we can consider the machine parameters being considered in their feasibility studies. We put them into our Monte Carlo simulator. We consider how the distributions can be for such machinery, and then we see how their fills will be. We try to generate a fill profile. We replicate that for a year. We replicate a number of years. For example, in my case, I'm trying to replicate 10,000 years of LHC operations. You ask, why 10,000 years? Because we want to make sure that we have statistical significance in our data. That is very important when you are testing optimization algorithms. You want to have uncertainty values. You want to know how accurate your algorithm is. And then, of course, we get the optimal fill time. And from that, we create the fill strategy that should be used for optimizing the operations in the LHC. So
Very
that's our
interesting.
job.
Very interesting. I'm assuming you work with a lot of people then.
Yes. So in essence, my project has mostly to do with three main areas. So we have a strong physics component, of course, because accelerator physics is the main area where we are applying this research. Of course, since we are considering such algorithms, there's a strong mathematical component. And then there's the computer engineering component, which helps us first and foremost to do the data analysis of the data that we are collecting from the LHC. And secondly, to create the machine learning algorithms to train, test, and validate the algorithms that we have created. So it is multidisciplinary and a combination of fields.
Yeah.
And that enriches the project even more. So yes, we need people from mathematics, we need people from physics, we need people from computing, and they all help us even from their experience of operations and from experience of running the LHC to be able to understand better how things go operationally in order to be able to create more realistic fills, because at the end of the day, we want to replicate what happens in reality. Otherwise, what we're doing doesn't really make sense. No.
All right. Wow, really interesting. So, how did you become a scientist? And even more, what inspired you to become a scientist?
Excellent question. I think this is something that many people can relate to, because at the end of the day, what makes a scientist a scientist? It's a bit philosophical. So my inspiration started really, really early. I was really fascinated by encyclopedias that my parents used to give me for my birthdays. For my birthdays, I always received books.
Oh, that's nice.
That was the main birthday gift. And my first encyclopedia was actually a Maltese encyclopedia. L-Encyclopedia bil-Malti, Atfal.
Okay.
So it was a children's encyclopedia, all written in Maltese language. And the illustrations that were in it were fascinating. And it spoke about everything from society to nature, to science, to cultures, everything. And there were these pages, like around the middle of the book, which had to do with the solar system. And I was fascinated about this. Like, so they're saying that these things are outside of our world. It's not something that people used to speak about very often in the early 2000s. No, you won't go out in the street and people will be talking about planets. And what I used to do was, my mom used to take me to her hairdressers. I remember this very vividly. I take this book everywhere with me, and to everyone who would lend me an ear, I would recount the names of the planets in order. And people would look at me like, probably she likes the colors. Probably the colors make sense to her. She must be fascinated by them. But that was around 4 or 5 years of age, so they were the first books I started reading from.
Okay. Quite
And so people could really see that she likes the color. She's always drawing rockets, fair. But when a 10-year-old, 15-year-old, 18-year-old person keeps on talking about planets, you probably have an issue there, no? Like, why are they so fascinated? Why are they considering this like a real career goal? I remember, like, after my O-levels, my dad was telling me, consider your career options very well. I will not dishearten you. It's your choice, but perhaps you can become a doctor. You really like biology and chemistry. I really loved biology and chemistry. But physics and maths were the subjects that were really giving me challenges. So I was adamant, and I told him, no, Dad, I will study maths and physics, and I want to do astrophysics. That was my greatest dream. For me, CERN was something completely unreachable. It was very far out from what I could possibly aspire to. Because, of course, they would always tell you, you're a girl from Malta, think realistically. That's how they would say it to me. Be realistic. Become a doctor, become a nurse, become a teacher. They were beautiful professions, but they were not what I wanted to become. And the real pivotal point was the I Choose career fair, right after my O-levels, a couple of days after, where we had met representatives from the physics department who told my parents that there was the possibility to actually study astronomy at the university. So that's where things really encouraged me, and I started my maths and physics course at university. So everything started from there. I took the 2 subjects which really challenged me instead of the subjects that really came natural to me. And they challenged me at university. It was no easy time. Because you are learning to think in a different manner. The concepts are not always intuitive, and you really need to put effort into them. Maths, particularly, is not an easy subject, but if you put your heart and soul into it, you really start appreciating it theorem by theorem, logical step by logical step, you start to hone the thinking process yourself. And after I graduated from that, I did a thesis in galactic dynamics for my bachelor's, which was wonderful. I really learned a lot. I was particularly interested in the mechanics of the orbits I was considering. And it was fascinating, it was lovely. What then drove me was, I was part of the mathematical society, the Malta Mathematical Society. And in one way or another, my friends in the society influenced me. And I started seeing the possibility of, perhaps I should move closer to mathematics. So I was in between worlds. On one side, I was applying to universities in Europe to continue my studies in astrophysics. On the other side, I was thinking always how to combine a maths element to it. I was accepted in a couple of universities. I was accepted in Leiden and Groningen, which are quite notable names in the world of astronomy. At the end of the day, I said, maybe maths is my calling. And I started a master's in numerical methods. And I was applying it to another physics environment, which was the Euler-Bernoulli beam equation. fourth-order partial differential equations and finding combined numerical methods of how to solve these. Fourth-order partial differential equations, where you're considering both time and space, is considerable. It is a challenge.
Definitely.
But I also got the opportunity, and I thank both the Faculty of Science and the Faculty of ICT for this, to incorporate units from data science into my studies. And this really helped me because I felt that data science component was something I lacked in. So being able to study these units and participate in them really opened perspectives for me, really opened me to a world that I was not that familiar with. I also got the opportunity to study neural networks in these fields, so in these study units that I was following. And later on, I had received this email on the university email about a possible PhD that had to do with optimizations at the Large Hadron Collider at CERN. And as I was reading about this, my heart ticked and I said, I cannot say no to this. This is literally combining my 3 favorite fields in one go. So I contacted the professor and they interviewed me. We went through the whole process. And on 1st October of last year, I started my journey at CERN. I started my PhD at CERN. And it was beautiful because I got to meet so many scientists and physicists, accelerator physicists with so much great experience that they have accumulated through their research and through the years, that the knowledge they imparted on students like me, not just on myself, but also on my colleagues, it's literally a mine of knowledge. And you benefit from that because it doesn't only help you to grow as a science enthusiast and as someone that you enter the CERN control room and you say, wow, I'm actually here, and I can touch the buttons, and I can do collimations, and I can participate in machine development studies, but also as a researcher in your professional career. And I believe that is a godsend opportunity. I highly encourage students that if they encounter these opportunities, sign up to participate, to become a part of this.
Especially at this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You know?
Indeed it is. Indeed it is.
Wonderful. Prosit. Madam. So, what does a day at work look like?
A day at work? Well, it mostly depends on the stage of the research. So, for example, in the beginning, it was more the gathering of data and making sense of everything and compiling data together. Then we had moved on to the stages of data cleaning and data analysis and seeing the distributions of the data, how the data is behaving. You see outliers, you try to figure out why those outliers happen. You see if it makes sense to truncate them or if you have to keep them into consideration because the machine usually behaves like this. Even though they are outliers, these might be one-off cases that happen, but you still need to keep into consideration. Or if you're putting all the statistics together and building your code, so then you have to really spend the day in front of your PC and you compile things together. That's different every month, I guess. So a day would start with me having my breakfast and making my way to work. Then I arrive in my office and say hi to my office mate. Then I don't speak to her for various hours, because I would be immersed in my work. I like to listen to music while I'm working. Then I start on my analysis, or if I'm writing my paper like I am right now writing my paper. And then I interact with the physicists that have to do with my work. For example, if there are things which I'm lacking in knowledge or which I know that I must consult the experts on, I get to, for example, have lunch with them and discuss with them what's puzzling me in a particular problem, or what's their opinion, or what's their experience when they face a particular issue. And so I compile experiences and I combine them into my work in order to always try to make, as much as possible, the creation of these was more realistic, because that's my intention, no? And then around the evening, I go out of work. And either it's Friday evening and we all gather in R1, Restaurant 1, and we have a little chit-chat together, or if it's during the week, I'm either heading to the gym or heading to the swimming pool to do some swimming, because there's no sea in Geneva, of course. You can imagine how hard it is for me. and then it's time to go to sleep. So that's how my days in Geneva currently look like.
So even like if you have this busy day, you
I
still have
need
time.
to do exercise.
Yeah.
So I try to really limit how much work comes into my personal life after work, because otherwise it's very easy to slip into the obsession of I'm going to work on my PhD all day, every day. And okay, that might happen towards the end, but I'm trying to keep it at bay for now to make sure that it doesn't inundate me. Otherwise, you end up living for your PhD, it starts consuming you slowly and slowly, and it can result in burnout, which is something very not rare within researchers.
Yeah.
So maintaining like good physical activities, maintaining interpersonal relationships with your colleagues, and try to make friends also outside of work circles. And but you always, like, first priority is always work.
Yeah.
So you must dedicate your time to work, you must put all your focus into it. But then you must not forget that your life also has other aspects outside of work. So it's important to put a barrier between the two, and unless something is really, really imminent, try not to let that overlap.
And even if it's like you don't even appreciate that you're at CERN,
Yes.
you know, so as you said,
Okay,
it is
so-
important.
The CERN experience is a particular one, because first and foremost, you're a Maltese researcher at CERN. The sheer idea, the sheer thought of it is incredible. We're only 3 Maltese people at CERN. Our language is very rare to hear. They say hello to Andre and Ariana from here. It's very particular, you know, because you also get to really realize what this opportunity means. It's not every day that you hear Maltese people who are at CERN. And to be one of the few people who get to experience this, it's an absolute privilege, and I'm very grateful for it. The second thing is, outside of CERN, you're in Switzerland. You have the Jura Mountains behind you when you wake up in the morning, and the Alps in front of you. So when there's good weather, we wake up and we see the Mont Blanc.
That must be lovely.
It's a different experience from Malta. You understand what I mean? So you need to enjoy the environment which is surrounding you. I really enjoy going on hikes or going cycling. I haven't tried skiing yet,
Okay.
because I'm very, very fearful, but eventually I'll pluck up the courage to do it. I want to do it, because you can't go around saying I spent 3 years in Switzerland and I never went skiing. It's a shame. It's an absolute shame. So yeah, I mean, I will try my best for that. And there's a bunch of sports, like people go paragliding from the
Okay.
mountains. So it's insane, no? It's something incredible.
Something we don't see here.
Something we don't see that often. So yeah, I mean, it's also a bump to move out of your comfort zone. You're meeting new communities, you're meeting people from very different backgrounds that have a lot of different experiences. And it helps you grow as an individual as well. So it really pushes you to become accepting. Malta is a very closed community in a sense, because we all know each other. We all know what we're accustomed to. We're not used to trying new things unless it's within our character. We have a very defined routine and schedule, and we live with that. But when you're in such an international community, you have to jump into it. You have to engage.
Yeah.
And
It pushes you to do it.
Yes, it pushes you to do it. And it builds you as a human being. It builds your character, it builds you even physically, it builds you in multiple senses, particularly psychologically, in the way you think about things. That's an experience.
So when you're there, do you miss Malta?
Every day, ironically enough. And I'll explain to you why. CERN is like a little village. And you get to know many people in one way or another. You build your community there, you build your colleagues. But there's something missing in the form of fireworks sounds. I'm joking. So yeah, I mean, you miss the Maltese culture, you know? We have very staple days where our community comes together, and you have your friends, you have your family, you have your colleagues that you know you're gonna visit them, you know you're gonna see them. But you don't have that at CERN. It's quiet, it's very quiet. And there's not the bubbliness of Malta. There's not the hustle and bustle of our country. It's hectic in a way, but in a different way. It's not environmentally hectic. It's not how the communities come together and they're going to throw a festa every weekend for summer. Summers are very quiet at CERN. So yes, and most of all, I miss my family.
Of course.
I'm an only child.
Oh,
I miss my mom, I miss my dad, I miss my grandparents. Call them every weekend, my grandparents, to make sure we keep in touch. I call my parents very frequently. I love doing video calls with them because I want to see their faces.
Yeah.
And I want them to see mine. I want them to know that I'm happy, I'm doing my things, you know. It's a different experience. Malta remains in the heart.
Yeah.
It's a completely new adventure.
Nice. Lovely. Okay, so I mean, what advice would you give your younger self, and what do you think is most understood? I'll do it. So.
Għandek raġun.
Yeah. Okay.
U le Matija jtija nofsija ta'.
Okay. So.
I'm inspiration.
Yeah. To continue, what do you think is the most misunderstood idea about your field?
So, we're at CERN. We're talking about nuclear physics. And of course, when people hear nuclear physics, the first thing that comes to mind is nuclear bombs, nuclear disasters, Chernobyl, I've heard also. And that people are afraid of that. The situation is actually twofold. So you have from one side this whole nuclear aspect, from the other side is the conspiracy theories. And when we're doing like public visits at CERN, you have these types of questions. People ask these questions. Do you create black holes at CERN? Are you going to explode the Earth in one way or another? Is the universe going to end because you create something in the LHC? No, none of that. We don't do those things. We have a very basic bottle of hydrogen atoms. We take the protons, we accelerate them, we collide the protons, and we study what's coming out of it. We don't do black holes at CERN. We wish, but we don't. It's very difficult to do black holes, people. So yeah, people often misunderstand these concepts. Sometimes they come with very legitimate questions, and it is our duty as scientists to explain what is actually happening and what we are doing. And misinformation nowadays is something that is very widespread, and it's unfortunate because it confuses people.
It's easily accessed as well.
And it's easily accessible. Like if you go on YouTube and write CERN, I cannot guarantee that what you're gonna find is the actual knowledge, which is unfortunate because the proper knowledge should be made available to everyone. And it is. CERN publishes everything, so we don't restrict knowledge. But people often want to do their own theories. So it's our job also to combat misinformation by spreading our proper research and what's actually happening in a way that the public can understand. So it's useless going too complicated. Knowledge should be accessible to all. That's the fulcrum of it.
All right. Thank you for the clarification. To conclude, what advice would you give your younger self?
When I think of my younger self, I only think one thing: keep at it. Keep at it. Because when I was young, I was very inquisitive. I wanted to talk to everyone. I wanted to know everybody's experience. And particularly if they had anything to do with science, I craved to know their experience. And I think keep being inquisitive. Keep wanting to learn. Keep being interested in everything. Because at the end of the day, jumping from one field to another is what brought me to this. So being flexible, being willing to learn new things and to adapt my skills from one thing to another is what really led me down the road to come to CERN at the end of the day. So yes, I tell my younger self with a little pat on the head, keep at it, little girl, you'll make it someday.
Exactly. All right, lovely. Thank you for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you for having me on this podcast.
Exactly. It was a pleasure. It really was, Maria.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to all science students out there, keep rocking, guys. You're gonna make it.